Hello, everyone. As Anne so kindly introduced me, my name is Caitlin Gertz. I'm an epidemiologist at Advancing New Standards in Reproductive Health at UCSF. And most of my work focuses around unsafe and illegal abortion. I've done a good deal of work measuring the impacts of unsafe abortion around the world. And today I wanted to talk to everyone about sort of a global picture, give everyone a global picture of what abortion looks like globally. And over the next 15 minutes, we'll touch on three broad areas: abortion incidence, abortion safety and legality, and access to safe abortion in different contexts. So to begin, we'll talk about abortion incidence. And before we talk about abortion, it's important to talk about pregnancy. So in developing countries, approximately 1/3 of all pregnancies that occur are unintended, mistimed, or unwanted. And the outcomes of those unintended, mistimed, or unwanted pregnancies fall into three categories: abortion, carrying a pregnancy to term, or adoption. As you can see, adoption takes up a very small slice of the pie globally. And so we're left with two options: carrying a pregnancy to term or abortion. Now, the abortion pie includes spontaneous abortion, so miscarriage, and induced abortion. We lump them together because it's incredibly difficult to measure in many contexts whether or not an abortion is spontaneous or induced, for a lot of the reasons that we'll talk about shortly. Now, over the past 2 decades, the decline, a decline that we had seen fairly steadily taking place in the global abortion rate, has stalled. As you can see, there was a fairly substantial decline from 1995 to 2003. But then from 2003 to 2008, and these are the most recent data that come from the Guttmacher Institute, which does a great deal of counting of abortion and contraceptive use. The decline has really stalled. And what we see is that stall in the decline of the abortion rate has coincided with a plateau in contraceptive use globally. And there are many factors that contribute to this. Some of them are policies directly relevant to the United States government, not promoting contraception, sort of promoting abstinence-only education in developing countries. But there are also problems with access to contraception. Stockouts happen quite frequently. And as we have seen the contraceptive prevalence plateau and funding for contraception plateau over the past few decades, the global abortion rate has also plateaued. As we saw, it was declining quite steadily. And just to put it into context, the abortion rate is substantially lower in developed countries than in developing countries. And we see 3 lines here: developed countries, developing countries, and then developed countries excluding Eastern Europe, where the abortion rate is quite high because abortion has been widely available and accessible for decades in Eastern Europe. So the difference, the marked difference between an abortion rate of 29 versus 17 is sort of what you want to look at when you're comparing developed versus developing countries. But despite the fact that there are differences in abortion rates in different parts of the world, women all over the world have abortions for much the same reason. Abortion is a common event. I'm sure that most everyone in this room has heard the statistic that in the United States, 1 out of every 3 women will have had an abortion by the end of her reproductive life. And all over the world, when women have unintended pregnancies and are seeking abortion, they cite the same reasons: economic concerns, concerns about being able to provide for their existing children, concerns about their own health, relationships, and educational goals. So now we turn to the fact that while abortion is a common event, the safety of abortion varies quite dramatically depending on where you live. When performed in safe and sterile conditions, as abortion is in most developed countries throughout the world, abortion is one of the safest medical procedures that we know. In fact, it is safer than taking a dose of penicillin. However, when performed in unsafe or unsterile conditions, horrific consequences can occur, including chronic morbidities, maternal mortality, and of course, strains on families and on already taxed health systems. And indeed, there is a truly disproportionate impact of unsafe abortion. I think that this quote from the WHO captures the disproportionality of the impact quite nicely. Deaths and disability related to unsafe abortion are entirely preventable. Within developing countries, risks are greatest for the poorest women. They have the least access to family planning services and are the most likely to suffer the negative consequences of an unsafe procedure. Poor women also have the least access to post-abortion care when they need treatment for complications. And unfortunately, recent data suggest that an increasing proportion of all abortions that occur in the world are unsafe. And we see, of course, that the greatest proportion of unsafe abortions occur in the developing world. Now, by the WHO definition of unsafe abortion, which is a termination of a pregnancy performed by someone lacking the minimal medical training or in an environment lacking the minimal medical standards, or both. By that definition, virtually all of the abortions that occur in Latin America would be considered unsafe. The same is true for Africa. And we see a declining proportion of unsafe abortions in Asia, particularly because Asian statistics are generally swamped by Chinese data where abortion is safe and widely available. But deaths from unsafe abortion are quite disproportionate by the different regions. And deaths from unsafe abortion are indeed the highest in Africa. This trend, the trend of continued maternal mortality, high levels of maternal mortality from unsafe abortion in Africa, and substantially lower levels of maternal mortality from unsafe abortion in Latin America and the Caribbean, are primarily driven by the availability and access to a drug called misoprostol. Misoprostol is it is an abortifacient. It was originally intended as an ulcer drug, but has been put to use as a drug that is incredibly effective at preventing postpartum hemorrhage, and is also an effective drug on its own to induce abortions safely and outside of medical facilities. And many women are using this across the globe. And despite the fact that we see an increasing proportion of abortions that are, by the WHO definition, unsafe, the differences in maternal mortality from unsafe abortion really are being driven by misoprostol. So this is just a quick snapshot to give us a sense of what the legal structure around abortion is in various countries around the world. So the majority of women in the world live in countries where abortion is restricted. And this 40% of the pie that represents countries without restrictions indeed includes countries like the United States of America, simply because in the US you do not have to give a reason for seeking an abortion. We know, all of us know, that there are indeed restrictions placed on access to abortion in this country, but in this rubric, countries like the US fall within that realm. And this is just a map giving you a sense of where abortion laws are the most restrictive. So one thing that we do know is that, as we saw, the global abortion rate is relatively different in developed countries and developing countries. It is certainly higher in developing countries for the most part because access to contraception is less regular. Contraception is less available. Women have fewer options to prevent unintended pregnancies, and when they do have unintended pregnancies, abortion is essentially their only option. We know that women who have unintended pregnancies will seek abortions. We know that many women, most women in the world, live in countries where the laws are restrictive, where abortion may be completely illegal or highly restricted and inaccessible. What we do know is that restricting legal access to abortion does not, in fact, increase safety. It does not decrease abortions. What it does is make abortions less safe. And we have a few shining examples over the past few decades of countries that have, in fact, liberalized their abortion laws. And sorry, I'm getting a time from Anne. The consequences or the result of liberalizing abortion laws in countries where abortion is unsafe is a decrease in abortion-related mortality and abortion-related morbidity across the board. So I will just leave you with one thought, that as we see declines in the harms from unsafe abortion when abortion laws are liberalized, we may not always have the opportunity to change legal framework and legal structure in every country in the world. But something that is happening and is very exciting are harm reduction approaches. So there are hotlines and websites run by on-the-ground grassroots feminist organizations around the world that are providing access to the WHO protocol for misoprostol for induced abortion to give women the opportunity to safely terminate a pregnancy outside of the medical system, outside of legal frameworks where they don't have access to it. And this is really what's driving the decline in abortion-related mortality in Latin America, and we hope to see in Africa and Asia soon as well. Thank you.